effective. And just give me 1 minute. I apologize. And I'm going to read through our hearing script.
Don Johnson is having trouble signing in. My wife, Marion, is talking to him now and trying to help him.
Okay, great. Thanks for that update. Again, I'm happy to wait for him if you'd like, but otherwise we can get started. Is that right? We want to get started, or do we want to wait? Shernapi, you there?
And Sheila Rosenthal. Looks
like is that just my screen, or is everyone else, is he freezing up for everybody?
I think he's freezing up, yeah.
Yep, okay.
I heard someone trying to log in also.
Yeah, I think it may be the woman from East Price Hill Improvement Association, Sheila Rosenthal, I thought I heard there.
That we were expecting her, that's correct.
Can you hear me?
Mr. Napi, are you with us?
yes, for a minute there it cut out, but can you hear me?
I can. We didn't hear anything else you said just a moment ago. Would you like to proceed now, or would you like to wait for Don Johnson?
1 second. Marion, is Don closed? I know he has a lot to contribute. He met Sheila Rosenthal twice. I was at one of the meetings, and then at the other one, he met her at the site with photos in hand. So it would be helpful if he was able to speak. But I myself took us 15 minutes to sign in. It's just for whatever reason, it seemed more complicated this time.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we can give him a couple minutes here.
He's having trouble getting in. He's calling Lower.
All right. Well, okay. Well, he had trouble getting in. He was going to be calling Mark, but I guess we can proceed.
And I assume he's able to log in at any time if he's technically able to, correct?
He'll
be able to speak.
Yeah, anytime during the hearing, if anyone attempts to join, I typically let those folks in, whether they're from the public or a part of the applicant team. So I will get notice as soon as he gets through. He can join on any device, including his cell phone, as long as it has a camera. Sometimes those cooperate a little bit better than the computer. But let me go ahead and I'll read through our hearing script, and then we'll start. And again, if he comes in at any time, or if Ms. Rosenthal comes in at any time, I will go ahead and let either of them in. So this is the May 18th, 2022 session of the zoning hearing examiner docket. My name is David Sturkey. I'm the zoning hearing examiner for the city of Cincinnati, and I'll preside over this hearing. The case before us today is continued from March 23rd. It's case number ZH20220019. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and opposing parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the zoning hearing examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing, unless a party has opted to submit evidence or testimony in the form of writing prior to this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. So since this is continued from the last hearing, if you wanted to just briefly summarize what the project is, just get us back all on the same page, the relief you're asking for, and then I'll give the applicant After that, I'll give the applicant an opportunity to give me some updates. Let me know if anything has changed. I know that there were some additional photos that were submitted as a part of evidence. If you want to walk me through those, I think that was the main reason for us doing the continuance, or one of the main reasons. Walk me through those and any other new information or new evidence or new testimony that you would like me to hear. After that, I'll go, and I think we have Ms. Rosenthal joining us now. After that, I'll go to the public and allow anyone from the public, including Ms. Croft and Ms. Rosenthal, to add any testimony that they would like. I'll go to the zoning department and give the zoning department an opportunity to provide any testimony in addition to the staff report. Hi, Ms. Rosenthal. Are you with us? You're muted.
Hello, thank you.
Hey, sure, yeah. I'm just going through the procedure for the hearing right now. And so the applicant's going to present their case and tell me a bit more about the project since our last hearing. I'm then going to give anyone from the public an opportunity to speak. So that will include you and Ms. Croft. I'm then going to give the zoning department an opportunity to provide any testimony. In the event that any party does testify or offer an argument in opposition to this application, I'll go back to the applicant and give them an opportunity to respond to any of those arguments or points that have been made in opposition. And then I'll give the applicant an opportunity to make any closing statements. So after all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or to make any comments. I may also refuse to consider hearsay testimony or documents. That's generally evidence you want to introduce that consists of statements made by someone who's not present at this hearing. In the event of any technical difficulties, which we've already sort of experienced a few, I'll do my best to troubleshoot those on the fly. But to the extent there's some defect that prevents us from meaningfully going forward with this hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing at my discretion. Okay, at this point, I am going to go ahead and swear in all of our witnesses. So if you intend on providing any testimony here today, making any comments, asking any questions, doing anything other than just strictly observing here today, then you need to be sworn in. So if you know that you're going to be doing that, if you could make sure that you're off of mute and raise your right hand. I need everyone to answer out loud. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
I do.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, so who's going to be taking the lead here for us on the applicant side? Will it be Mr. Kanninger or Mr. Navi?
I will.
Mr. Kenninger.
Okay, the floor is yours.
All right, and if it's all right, I'm going to share my screen here.
It is.
Okay, is that visible for everyone?
Yes,
Okay,
for me.
It is, yes.
all right. I'm going to refer to this site plan as well as some other documents that we had before. And these are the elevations, the side elevations of the proposed single-family structure. So it's just kind of a review. The request that we're making basically came down to two variances that we're requesting. One is a front yard setback. The existing setback on this lot in 2617 that I'm showing right here now is a vacant lot. Our intent is to build a single family residence, a very high quality single family residence on this vacant lot. And we're asking for two variances in order to do that. One is a front yard setback. The current setback, according to zoning on this property, is 20 feet. There's a 20-foot front yard. The structure adjacent to it right here at 2613 has a setback of approximately 25 feet. So the setback variance that we're requesting is 6 feet. Or I'm sorry, we're asking for a front yard setback of 6 feet, which would be a variance based on the average that zoning came up with, which was 22 feet. That's what they were saying the setback should be. That would be a variance of 16 feet. And I'll get into that in detail later. The other variance we're asking for is a height variance. according to, again, the zone that we're in, the allowable height is 35 feet. And this is the elevation that was submitted for our structure. And if you were able to add these numbers up on the side, our structure, the roof of our structure, the roof deck, which is represented by this area right here, is actually 32 feet above grade. So that is represented by this area here and this area here. There is a stair tower, which is in this middle section of the property right here, that does go above 35 feet by 6 or 7 feet, depending on how this roof is sloped. I believe we were showing 41 feet 2 inches as the overall height to the top of this roof. So 70% of our structure is actually under the required 35-foot height. This 15-foot stair tower here does go above that 35-foot maximum allowable height. And
Mr. Kanigher, I'm gonna, sorry to interrupt. Is it just me? Can someone else? It looks like your cursor is over the street, over the public right of way, and
really?
not actually
Yeah.
over 2617. Now it's over 2617.
So you don't see the building elevations here?
No, I just see what looks like a site plan or like a zoomed out CAGIS map of the general area. It says
Okay.
KPS zoning site at the top. It's a PDF.
There we go.
How
Now
about now?
I'm seeing the side elevations.
Okay.
Says my
One
battery's
second.
running out.
That's Ms. Croft. I believe that's Mr. Kanigher's computer. Ms. Croft, that's Mr. Kanigher's computer. Okay, all right.
So we can see the elevations now.
Yeah,
Okay. To regroup a little bit then, the elevations I was showing were the proposed elevations for the structure on this site. And I think that's where you lost me, correct?
yes.
Okay, so if we go back to those elevations, this is the side elevation that would be, this side right here would be looking towards the city. So these are 2 windows that we'll be talking about eventually. And this is a roof deck area, which we will also be referring to. This roof deck in this entire edge of the roof right here is only 32 feet tall. Zoning height requirement is a maximum of 35 feet. On the other side of our structure, which is the west side of the structure facing Mount Hope, you have a stair tower that I'm showing right here. This stair tower is 15 feet wide. So even on this side elevation, 70% of our structure is under the required 35 feet maximum. The very tip of this roof is 41 feet, 6 inches approximately. So it is about 6 to 7 feet above the required maximum. But that's only where this stair tower is. The other 70%, as I said, is below that height requirement. So understanding those numbers, the height variance that we're asking for is really only for 15 feet of this one side of the elevation of this structure. That's the height variance we're requesting. So I'm going to go, first of all, into what we consider the hardships on this property. And in doing that, I'm going to review, first of all, were there any other questions on the elevations or?
I don't think so. You said that it only extends the height restrictions on one side. Did I hear that right?
The stair tower, I'm going to go back to the site plan. That stair tower that I was showing in elevation is just right here in the footprint.
I got you. It doesn't
It's
extend
only-
the whole width.
Right, it's only 8 feet wide by 15 foot deep, the size of the footprint of the stair. So really about where you see that number 2 on this site plan, that's the extent of the stair tower that pops up above the maximum 35 feet. And it rises by about 6 to 7 feet, depending on where you measure. The rest of the structure, like I said, is 3 feet below the maximum height.
Got it.
So the main hardship on this property, when we talk about either the setback requirement or the height requirement, is the street itself. According to the calculations through zoning, whether it's for setbacks or for height, they pretty much looked at one structure. And that was 2613 right here, which is an existing story and a half, 28-foot tall, single-family dwelling. For setbacks, zoning specifically states, and I'm sure somebody can quote this better than I, but you look at the average of adjacent structures within either 300 feet, and 300 feet would take you well past this intersection here at Hope and West 8th. They have to be on the same side of the street, and they have to be within the same block. Because of the length of this street and the makeup of the neighborhood, technically that takes us down to one structure, which is 2613. But I think anyone reasonably looking at this street and the structures around it could say that 2613 is the least representative structure of this street on the whole block. And if I could, I'm going to refer to this photo, which I'll come back to later. Just in this one photo, which is one of my drone shots, you see this structure right here. Well, first of all, the vacant lot that we'll be filling is this spot right down here. Across the street, we have a 36-foot tall theater building that is actually on the property line. I think last time I said it was 10 feet off. It's actually a 0 setback. It is sitting on the property line. We have this 42-foot tall structure here, which is also a 0 setback. We have the two dwellings other dwellings that zoning referred to, which are right here, which are story and a half structures. But again, these are the least representative of the area. You can see over here on the corner, we have this red brick building, which is about 62 feet tall. It is also a 0 setback on both elevations. And if I was able to turn the camera to the right here, you have a 12-story structure, hundreds of feet tall. You have 4-story, I'm going to refer back to my site plan here. So here we are again. Right here, we have a 4-story condominium building. And right here, we have the 12-story Queens Tower, which is 12 stories tall, much more than 35 feet. So within this,
I believe it's 17 or 18 stories.
and I think you're right. I never could nail down the exact number of stories of the building, but well above 35 feet for sure. So within this very short street, we have a 42-foot tall structure with 0 setback. Over here, we have a 62-foot tall structure with 0 setback. We have the theater building, 36 feet tall with a 0 setback. 17-story Queens Tower, a 4-story condo building, but the one structure that our average setback and our average height was used to determine whether we were acceptable or not was this little 1.5-story single-family dwelling right here. And that is that is correct according to a strict interpretation of the zoning. But variances exist for situations just like this that are outside a strict interpretation of the zoning. In addition to that, if I was able to overlay a zoning map on here, you would see that all of these structures here on Mount Hope are in an SF4, I believe it's SF4 zone, a single family zone. We are in an SF4 zone. But all of this property behind us, all of this property where the condo, the theater, the 12-story structure, all of that property is in a PUD, which tomorrow, if somebody wanted to, they could build a 12-story structure. They could do it on a 0 setback, and that would all be according to the guidelines of the PUD. So that's what we're in the middle of. And if the purpose of the zoning is to make sure that a structure reflects the context of the street, then somebody tell me what the real context of this street is. Is it 2613? Or is it all these other structures that we just talked about? The last hearing, when I looked at our setback, when I calculated the setback that we proposed, it wasn't based on views. Views weren't an issue. It wasn't based on anything other than if you took the zoning and looked at it in terms of this street, and you took the average of all these structures that I just mentioned and did the math, you came up with a 6-foot setback. That's where our number came from.
Okay.
So the hardship we face is zoning as it's applied to this street. And what we're asking is take a realistic view. And if you use my numbers in the structures that are actually there, it's a 6-foot setback. And we think that reflects more of what's happening on the street than a 25-foot setback associated with one structure.
Okay.
As far as the height regulation, it's basically a similar discussion. Again, we have all of these structures around us that are 42 feet or higher. Literally, every adjacent structure is higher than 35 or 40 feet, other than 2613. And to be honest, these 3 dwellings right here over on Mount Hope, which are in our rear yard, these are 1.5-story dwellings also. But again, if you take the average of all the structures around here, you're over 60 feet in terms of height. So, and that's not even considering the elevation that I showed before, which, what are we really asking for? We're asking for a 17% height variance on one side of our building, which is only 30% of our total elevation. Throw a lot of numbers out. But basically, this 15-foot stair tower is the only piece of this structure that goes above that 35-foot height requirement. And again, think of that in terms of this surrounding area, where you're already surrounded by all of these structures that are already taller than us. What reflects this area more? A historic structure that looks similar to the house on the corner, or the house adjacent to us, which is a 1950s bungalow? We think it's a historic structure that's of a size and scale that can compete with and is a size and scale of these other buildings that we've discussed. So that is the reason for our height variance. And again, we believe the hardship is we were compared to one structure, and that one structure is the least representative of the street that we're on.
Do you have any renderings or drawings of the front elevation?
I do.
How it'll look on the actual streetscape?
I do, if you'll. This is always risky. So if that all worked well, this isn't the latest, but you should see a elevation right here, the front of the structure.
Yeah,
And right here, this is an elevation of the rear of the structure. The front does not appear to be fully rendered. Let me get this better here. I could find other ones, but this is the front of the structure. So you have a brick front that's very similar to other historic structures in the area. We have details that will blend it in with the area. And again, we're showing that 32-foot height here, which would be our roof deck. And then there's like a black iron railing on top of that. And this is the stair tower here, which is actually sitting about 23 feet back from the front elevation. So realistically, if you were standing on the street looking at this front elevation, you might not even see that stair tower because it's back in the middle of the building, as we showed in this elevation here.
okay. And so will there be any front yard at all, or what will be happening between in that 6-foot setback?
So in that 6-foot setback, you're going to have a front stoop, and then you will have where there's not either a stoop or a sidewalk leading to the main sidewalk from our front door, you'll have a 12-foot wide driveway. And where you're outside the driveway or the stoop, you'll have a green area. There will be green in the side yards. In fact, right here, there's some existing trees that will remain on this side, which would be the east side of the structure. There'll be green space. But as far as the frontage, there will be some area where we plan to do some landscape between your front door, which will be right here, and your driveway, which will be right here.
Okay. And I think that just to move it along a little bit, I think, one big sticking point that we were talking about last time that involved the photos was that a contention from the zoning department that you'd be able to achieve relatively the same views if you abided by the setback. Do you have any evidence to refute that?
Well, one other thing, if I could mention while we're on the site plan before we get to that, and the views was my next topic.
Sure, go ahead.
There was also a point brought up by zoning regarding the driveway and whether it would be permitted or not with a 6-foot setback. And to reiterate what I stated the last time, Department of Transportation and Engineering, and we have like 3 or 4 other designs that we're doing the same thing, where we're talking to them about the same thing right now. When you have a driveway that fronts on a street, they prefer that driveway be deep enough so that if a car pulls off the street, that vehicle can park without blocking the sidewalk. And there's 2 things. And the other thing is, if you can't do that, then they want it to be short enough so that a vehicle can't pull in and block that sidewalk without sticking out in the street. In other words, they want to make it not possible for a vehicle to park there. So based on that comment by zoning, again, I state 2 things. One, our unit is designed so we actually have 2 internal parking spaces, which is a very good thing for the street because there's not a lot of parking around here if you've ever gone to the Incline restaurant there. So we have 2 internal parking spaces. With a 6-foot setback, a car will not be able to pull in here and park without its rear end sticking out into the street. So this is the alternative that they would prefer. If we can't provide a 20-foot driveway so that a car can park without being on the sidewalk, they'd rather see it so that it's not possible for a car to park in the driveway. And that's the setup we have right now.
Okay, so if a car were to park in the driveway right now, a portion of the car, or under this design, a portion of that car would extend into the street,
It would,
over the sidewalk into the street?
it'd be into the curb, correct? Which, I mean, can somebody do that if they want to? Yes, but it would be illegally parking, or they would damage their car. But the reason we have 2 internal parking spaces is because people don't want to leave their cars out. People that are buying these homes want to be able to pull in safely and securely, park their car, go right into their unit, and they'll take an elevator up to the kitchen and have dinner. That's the layout. And if somebody did try to park like that, they would be illegally parking, and they could be towed or whatever, but it would be an illegal parking.
Okay.
Okay. So at the end of the last hearing, there was a comment made about how the views would be equal with the 22-foot setback, and how rear decks would be acceptable on the back of these units. And where the rear decks came from, I'm going to refer back to our drawing here. Mr. Mueller offered the suggestion that we could put decks and stairs on the back of the units instead of the stair tower, as an option to the stair tower. And I had talked with him even before the last hearing, and I agree, there are units in other areas that have rear decks, and which would be back here, and they have stairs on those decks that take them up to the roof deck. The difference is they have views from those rear decks. And I am going to, this is the view from our rear deck if we did develop rear decks. You're looking into a radio tower, the back of the 4-story apartment building right here, the back of the dwelling next to us, in a commercial parking lot. Nobody wants to buy this unit with a rear deck looking into this. I think it'd be pretty easy to agree that that's not a selling point. The roof deck is where that's gonna be their outdoor space. That's gonna be where their views are from. It'd be a waste of money to put rear decks on the back of these units, because it would actually be a negative selling point. Somebody walks out onto this rear deck and sees this, they're going down the street. To develop a rear stair on this in place of the interior stair, first of all, without a deck, which is what Mr. Mueller was comparing these to build it without a deck is basically building a fire escape on the back of the unit. So we'd be asking someone that's paying for a unit like this, by the time you got to the top of that stair, you're going to be 32 feet off the ground on a stair, overlooking the ground. A lot of people wouldn't even go up that stair. In Mr. Mueller's example, which would have been great if we had a view and if we had decks back there, you're never
David?
more than 9 feet off the ground. You're never more than.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. Walt, do you have
Yeah, I'd
something?
hate to interrupt during this, but I've worked with Mr. Koeniger for nearly 3 years on different projects. He knows full well that my name is Moeller and not Mueller. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mueller?
Yeah, it's
I usually
Mueller.
call you Walter. I'm sorry.
Mueller, like the high school.
Gotcha. Mr. Mueller, I apologize. So the point being, if was feasible to develop the decks, you'd never be more than 9 feet off the ground. Without the decks, you're 32 feet. There's some people that would never even go up a stair like that. And none of that is equal to an interior stair where you can come out of your kitchen, grab a coffee, walk up the stair, and go out onto your roof deck. So there's nothing about the rear of this property that is equal to the front of the property. We kind of got sidetracked on the rear. I'm going to switch to the front views. So I went out with a drone and I took photos at the two proposed setbacks lines at approximately the heights of first floor, second floor, third floor, and roof deck. And to answer one of the comments by Mr. Moeller, I did that two ways. One, I took a picture at the setback line, for example, let's say 6 feet. And then on the other one, I went, it was 6 or 7 feet back, because that's where you would actually be standing with a view. And if I go back to this elevation, you know, I can take a picture at the 6-foot setback line, but at 6 feet back, as Mr. Knopf mentioned at the last meeting, you're standing inside a wall. Nobody's standing at 6 feet and looking at the city. That's where the wall is. Where your view is right here in this window. And I think it's only fair that we judge the view from where it'll actually be, which are these windows, just as the owner of this building and in the comments that was brought up by zoning was, are we blocking the view from their windows? You know, we're not discussing whether we're blocking the view from inside their walls, it's from the windows. So that's why I took the pictures that I took, only to really represent what the view is. So having said that, this is a picture from the 6-foot setback, basically on ground level. And then my next photo went up to approximately the 2nd floor. And here we're on the 3rd floor. And then finally the roof deck. So this would be at a height of someone standing on the roof deck. And obviously you clearly have a view. Sure, you've got the 17-story building here and other things around you. We're in a diverse area, but you have the view. My next, and jump in if there's any questions, my next set of photos went back to 13 feet, which is basically, this is the view from that living room window. So now we're in our living room window. Of course, those hackberries are on our property, they'd be cut down. This is the living room window on the 2nd floor. And then I guess I missed one, but this is the living room. This is the same 13 feet back on the roof deck. And again, you're not yet behind this building.
So this view right here is from that 2nd or 3rd story window there that you just had on the side profile, the east side profile, that in looking out that window at a 6-foot setback.
At a 6-foot setback, correct, but 13 feet back would put you in this window.
Right. Okay.
And then the next ones that I'm going to go to, this is 29 feet back. And the reason I went to 29 feet is for the same reason, doing the same math. And without even getting into the views yet, let's do some basic math. If we are set to comply to a 22-foot, or I think it was 22.5-foot setback, which is what zoning came up with, and you go that 6 or 7 feet back, we're roughly at 29 feet. This structure here, the setback is 25 feet. So we're already 4 feet behind that structure. That's just basic math. These photos, I think, represent that. So this would be the setback where zoning said that our views would not be affected. This is the view out the 1st floor window. We're looking into the side of the building. This is the view out the 2nd floor window. And not only are we looking into the side of the building, you can see down here, we're now behind the incline restaurant. And then as we go up to the roof deck, again, we're behind the structure. There's the incline restaurant. I mean, it's pretty obvious that this view is nowhere close to this view. So those are the photos, and that was the logic behind the changes that I showed you. Now, one other thing when we're discussing views, it was brought up, actually, I think in a letter afterwards, 2 points were made by the owner of the building on the corner of Mount Hope, the owner of this building. There were 2 points that they made in the letter that I believe was submitted to zoning after our hearing. The first one was, they stated in the letter that when the 4-story condo project was built, which is this structure right here, they stated in their letter that when this condo structure was built, it blocked their view of the city. So their view's already blocked by their own letter. Zoning, and I believe in the letter, also the owner stated that if we built our structure, we would be blocking the view from their rear windows. So while I was out there, again with my drone, I literally turned the drone around. I'm now standing in the middle of that structure on the corner of Mount Hope and West 8th, looking at their rear windows. So this is the view from about 6 feet. This is a view you can see back here. That's one of their windows. The other ones are down here. There's a window. And you can see from, and I'm going to go back to this other photo. Here's that same tree. The tree is about as tall as their windows. The view is already blocked by this tree. In addition, if we were to build our structure, whether it's 6 feet back or 32 feet back, or I'm sorry, 22 feet back, their view is in this direction. We're at least, even according to the height variance, we're going to be behind this structure. We're going to block at least one of these windows. And that's even at the allowable height of 35 feet, which we're 32 feet. But the tree that I was just showing you is right here per survey. And this is that structure in the rear windows. So the question of view is, there is absolutely no comparison between the view from the rear of the property and the view from the front. There is no view from the rear of the property. It's a detrimental view from the rear of the property, or we would have decks back there. Second of all, there's no comparison between the view from 6 feet, a 6-foot setback, or the living room window with a 6-foot setback, versus the view from that living room window with a 22.5-foot setback. There is no view from that window at 22.5 feet. You're looking into the side of the structure next to us. And you can go by the photos or you can do the math, but they both add up to you're looking into the corner of that structure. So to summarize our view, without even our point, without even getting into views, first of all, we feel that the real hardship is the application of the zoning calculations. The 22.5-foot setback does not reflect the neighborhood. It does not reflect the average setbacks of structures, as I showed earlier. And the height limitation that was put on this building was based on one structure directly adjacent to us and certainly does not reflect the heights of the rest of the neighborhood. And in addition to that, consider that what we're talking about is a 15-foot wide stair tower on one side of a 44-foot elevation. Based on that, we request the 6-foot front yard setback and a 17% variance of the height to allow us to go to 42.5 feet. And that's our summary.
Okay. Just to be sure, so I'm certain of the numbers, you're not asking for 41 feet, 1.4 inches. You're asking for 42.5 feet.
For easy math, I believe the drawing shows 42 foot 1 1/16 inch. So we could even live with 41 feet 2 inches if that is preferable.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Kanninger. See that we have Mr. Johnson that has joined us. Mr. Johnson, if you can hear me, if you would unmute.
Yes.
Hi, welcome. So did you want to provide any additional testimony here today?
Well, yes, as far as setting the property back,
So let me first, let me get you sworn in first. If you could raise your
Okay.
right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
yes.
Great. Okay. What would you like to tell me?
Well, pushing the property back, as you can see from Mark's photos and things, would drastically change the type of property of what we're doing and basically affect the value of that property tremendously. If we could push that property up forward, have the city view, that will make that property a lot more desirable for more people, and the price point will be much higher than by pushing it back. And that would drastically change what could be built on that property in a nutshell.
Gotcha. Has this been vacant since 2013? Is that right? When the old single family was demolished?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. And was the single family occupied prior to that demolition permit?
I can't speak to that. I can't speak to whether it was occupied or how it was occupied. I know this structure adjacent to us, 2613, is rental property. It is occupied, but it's rented.
Well, Mark, I could answer that. That was rental property also. I knew the person who owned it. And it was a struggle. They had it rented, not rented, and it was somewhat of a problem. And he owned the other property that's still there too. They were both rentals, and they were vacant and rented from time to time. But they were problem properties.
So I certainly understand your contention that this is to develop it this way with these variances granted will make it more profitable. But let me ask you, is it economically viable to develop this property according to the zoning code and the setbacks at all?
I can maybe address that if
Sure.
if Don would give me the floor.
Yeah, go ahead.
I believe it would be economically feasible if we obtained the height variance and we got our 6-foot setback. And I'm certain of that. I've been a developer for 40 years, and I've been very successful. But the bigger picture here is that if we get a high appraisal on this building, single family building, I have numerous lots in Price Hill, specifically the Incline District, and we'd be able to get a higher appraisal base for those newly built homes. And that's what stands between Price Hill and Hyde Park. So we want this building to be a the bell cow, so to speak, and that single family homes will lift up values in the entire neighborhood and will have a ripple effect all the way back to Covedale. And so I approached this neighborhood on a macro model, and when I convinced the city to sell me this lot, the single family was part of their decision, and there was a lot of discussion at that time, and there was a groundswell of support from the community leaders, from everybody, that neighborhood needed single family homes. And whether the economic feasibility is a risk I'm certainly willing to take, and I can afford to lose money if that was the case. But further to your point, if we didn't get the two zoning variances, what would be economically feasible would be for me to build a smaller home that didn't have a view, and I could sell that and make a small profit. But that's not going to do anything for the neighborhood. And certainly, I've got something like 40 lots within 8 blocks of each other. And we're really talking about a revitalization. And once we have that many single family new homes, you're going to see businesses come in. I've talked with owners of commercial lots, and when news broke about what I was trying to do, they were fielding calls from businesses that wanted to build on their lots. So there's a bigger picture here. It is economically feasible, but if we don't get the zoning, then it'll be a smaller home. What the port approved was a 22-foot wide house. This home is 26 feet wide, and I think a little bit deeper. So we'd go back to that original port house. But why build something without a view when the Incline District right now is right up there with over the Rhine, and all it needs is some great housing. And we have remodeled townhomes that are fetching $2,000 a month. And so to answer your question, in my professional opinion, and if we get these zoning variances, this will be a home run.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Okay, Mr. Johnson, is there anything else you wanted to say before I turn it over to public comment here?
No, I just reiterate what Kim said. It's a pretty viable piece to be a pivot point to the area and what is going on. And I've actually located my office up there in the area and do probably more of the real estate business than anybody in the area. And yes, this is a pivotal point with this property. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thanks for being here, and sorry about the technical difficulties joining us, but appreciate your testimony. Okay, so I'm going to move over to Ms. Croft. Ms. Croft, you'll have to unmute. And
Am I
Ms. Rosenthal,
unmuted?
you'll be next.
Okay. Am I unmuted, David?
You are, yes. Floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. I have owned property since 1990 in this area, and I also grew up in this area. I went to Holy Family School, which is 4 blocks to the west. Holy Family is still a school and still operating. The public school that used to be in that area was torn down. I have sadly seen since 1990 a tremendous amount of good stock homes of various sizes and designs disappear. They disappeared because they were neglected and deteriorated, and the bulldozers came in and took them down. And that's been heartbreaking for someone who grew up in the neighborhood, not just as a property owner myself, but just seeing an area that at one time was a very viable, nice area to live. And it's still a great area to live. However, we need more of this type of development. We have many different brackets of housing, and I have no problem with that. I like a diverse neighborhood, but we do have a problem with getting businesses in up on Warsaw Avenue. And right now, Price Hill Development Corp has a $10 million refurbishing project going on 2 historical blocks, not far from here at all. And they're hoping on the first floor, which originally were commercial uses, and they are hoping to have commercial uses after the $10 million refurbishing. They will have affordable housing on the 2nd and 3rd floors of those buildings. Now, I was very much involved with a very long process, as many of the neighbors in East Price Hill were, with our Warsaw Alive program. And that took over a year and a half. And people really came out for that. And I have to admire them because, you know, we're all volunteers and we only have so much time in our days. And they were asked, what would you like to see in the neighborhood that you don't have now? And one of the biggest things were more commercial buildings that were empty, filled with either, maybe a nail salon or another bakery or things that we don't have, and they're empty. And I can remember when those buildings were full. And what's frightening to me right now that's occurring, the Kroger store in Warsaw, I was the chair of the Housing and Development Committee for ETHIA and spearheading that new Kroger store with the gas pumps. And when it opened up, it was very exciting. They had lots of more items that weren't there before. They really tried to meet the request of the community. But unfortunately, I think what has happened in the last 10 years is that I'm 70 years old. That was done about 12 years ago. People my age who used to shop there and support a deli have either moved into assisted living or passed away. We no longer have a deli in that store. I mean, I don't even shop in that store very often. I still go because I want a grocery store to stay there. But I have more and more friends of mine who live in the area who say they don't shop there. And I think Kroger's is a business and it can only sell what people buy. And having single home ownership residents and a higher income bracket, I think it would be great for Kroger's there and would bring back the items that I would go shopping in there for and maybe shop there only. I think a higher home ownership income bracket would also help with filling up the spaces of the empty storefronts all along our business district. UDF left. And I also think the people would have more time to get involved with our association, ETHIA. I am speaking for myself, as I told you, David. I'm speaking as a neighbor who lives there. We need this, and I don't understand why we shouldn't have it. And if this is not a textbook case of why we have variances, I really don't know what is. Those buildings up there, it's really quirky, as you have seen. And I think this request is very reasonable, and not to allow these variances, frankly, I would feel they would be allowed in Over the Rhine. They would be allowed in Mad Adams. They would be allowed in Columbia Tusculum. And not to have it here, frankly, I would feel would be a sad event. So I'm asking that you support these variances. I'm very excited about what this developer is willing to do. We don't have many developers. All of the lots that he has purchased, I remember the houses on those lots. They're gone. And as people say, when you lose a building along a street, it looks like you lost your front tooth. And it gives a negative impact. But once you do infilling building that's as tasteful as these designs are, it sends a very positive message. And not only is this good for East Price Hill, this is good for the city of Cincinnati. We need to populate this city, and we need to populate it with home ownership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Croft, for your time and your testimony here today and at our last hearing. I really appreciate your perspective. So thanks again for being here. Ms. Rosenthal, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I would. So I'm Sheila Rosenthal. I am the president of the East Price Hill Improvement Association Community Council. And our organization has met and discussed this at great length. The community was unable to reach a consensus as to whether to support or oppose the variance requests. On the one hand, we are very excited to have Mr. Napi come to our community and develop these properties. On the other hand, members of our community are very respectful and concerned about the interests of the property owner at 762 Mount Hope Avenue, which is the last standing structure that was built by a member of the Price family for which Price Hill is named. So we spent several hours in discussion of this matter at an open community council meeting, and we were unable to reach a consensus as to whether to support or oppose these variances. And so that is what I'm here to say.
Okay. I'd like to attempt, without getting into too much hearsay, maybe to dig in on that a little bit. So was there a consensus that this project, sort of generally speaking, would be good for the neighborhood in terms of, price point and filling the vacant property, that sort of thing? Or were there concerns about the actual setback and the height?
I think, the truth of the matter is that both things are true. The community is very excited to have, infill housing and to have single family housing being built on lots that have been vacant for a very long time. We see that as progress. We appreciate the fact that Mr. Napi has, started construction on a house over on Hawthorne Avenue. And that's, very similar to this one. And we're looking forward to seeing, more infill housing in the community, both by Mr. Napi and by others, hopefully. And we do believe that, single family is an important piece of our community, that we want home ownership in our community. We want people to be invested in our community. And we feel that these homes will, promote that. By the same token, there were concerns about the height and setback and the impact that those would have on the existing property owners' properties. So both cases were true, and that is why we were not able to reach a consensus.
Got it. Okay. Is the corner building, is that a rental or is that single family?
It is a rental, but it is a long-term rental. It's always been, it's always been that kind of construction, I think. But it's, it predates most of the other structures in the area, not all of them, but most of them. And as I said, it is significant in that it is the last structure in this area that was built by a member of the Price family, for which Price Hill's named.
Gotcha. So by potentially blocking views from that property, I mean, is that mostly what the contention is in terms of this project being a detriment to that home, that rental, that it would impede views?
I think there were multiple concerns. There were concerns, and there were many people who were engaged. So there were concerns about blocking the views potentially, the impact that might have on that property. There was also concern about the setback from the street and what that would be, whether that would be a safety issue, which was raised by Mr. Mueller. So those were the largest concerns, I think, with regard to the variances.
Got it. Okay. So officially, no position either way on this from.
That's correct. That we at the end of the day, after several votes, we arrived at the conclusion that our organization could not take a position on this. We welcome Mr. Noppy and are excited for everything he's doing. And yet in this particular case, unfortunately, our organization could not arrive at a consensus.
Got it. Okay. I want to. Sorry, Mr. Noppy. I want to ask you one more question, Mr. Rosenthal. Feel free to sidestep this or not answer if you don't want, but I mean, I assume that you're in the East Price Hill neighborhood. Do you believe that this is not contextual with the rest of this immediate area? And sorry if I worded that funny, but I mean, is it really outside the context of the rest of the space? Would it look out of place?
No.
I literally live a block and a half from here. So I'm very familiar with the area. The area is actually extremely eclectic. There is everything from 1870s, 1880s brick structures to ranch homes. And then of course we have the commercial development of the Queen's Tower and the theater, the condominiums, and the Incline Public House. So, and you can see in this picture that's on the screen now, there's two radio towers in one direction and another directly behind where this is being shot from. So it is a very eclectic collection, and there is no cohesion in that. As much as the owner of a Victorian home, wish that it were, we still had that Victorian, all the Victorian structures that were there previously. They're long gone, and we are not going to be building such again. So I do feel that the brick facade does match nicely with some of the surrounding structures. Beyond that, and it is very much a contemporary building though. So as to whether, I don't think it would, it's not my personal preference as I'm into a Victorian type of home, but as far as the community goes, it is, I don't think that it would be a negative. I think it would be a positive.
All right. Thank you very much. And thanks for answering some of those more pointed questions. Unless there's anything else you wanted to add, Ms. Rosenthal, I think I'll move on to our zoning plans examiner, Walter Mueller. Okay,
I think I've offered enough.
okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you again for being here. I appreciate your testimony. All right, Mr. Moeller.
Yeah, thanks, David. First, let me say we're not opposed to this development here at all. We think it's a wonderful product and a house that would contribute to this area up there. The issue that we have is that we fully believe that this house could be built in compliance with the zoning code. If you look at our staff letter that we updated for this, if you look at the comparison side by side of the two setbacks, one at 6 foot, one at 35 foot,
You have that.
it would be on the second page of that form that I gave you, the updated addendum to our staff report.
Let me share it.
Page 2.
Everyone's looking at the same thing here. Does everybody see that?
Yeah, it would be that one right there. As I stated originally when we were talking, the view for that home and even for the home on the corner isn't going to be directly to the east. Directly to the east is looking into those condos and into the incline house and the home that's adjacent to it to the east. The views that they're going to have are going to be over that park area. If you look on the left side of the picture there, that's where their view is, correct. And that's the view that is going to be obstructed if they move too close to the street for the home on the corner. So what we're saying is that the view is not going to be affected, to put it at the right location. Safety issues with people parking into the street will be mitigated. And he made some comments about averaging when we were talking about height. It's not a hillside district, so we don't look at averaging for height. It is strictly a rule that in that district, it's 35 foot. If you look in the findings, if you scroll down a little bit, we included a little information. Years ago, we used to look at those. We used to look at the rooftop access, the stairways up there, as an accessory and not the height. In a recent decision that we put in our ZBA hearing, they told us that we cannot exempt that. We have to measure that. That is where our height is measured from. So it wasn't that we don't want to approve these kind of things. We were told we could not approve those things as part of the hearing. We have in different areas where we've had several of these buildings that were built prior to that decision, recommended approval because of a substantial property right in the area, because there might have been 15 other homes that got approved prior to this decision with that. The issue that we have up here is that this is going to set that precedent for that area. Although zoning doesn't set a precedent, it does give them the ability to argue that it is a substantial property right because we have one already there. So that's the reason why we are recommended no on both of these, and we recommend that they put it where the zoning would approve it. And they do have options in order to design that rooftop access differently. Not one time did I ever mention that the view from a rear deck would be a sellable item. The deck idea is one that several other developers have used to access the roof. So we're pretty much where we are is the reasoning, safety issues for the parking in front, the view shed or the view of the downtown area is really not going to be affected. Their view is going to be over that park. And if you look at the side by side, there's not much difference there whatsoever.
Yeah. So Walt, just to make sure I'm looking at this correctly, are you
Yeah,
saying?
I think I have those numbers backwards underneath the 6 foot and the 35.
Okay.
Yeah. So the one on the left is 6 foot and the one on the right would be at the actual setback that we're recommending.
So this would be the front of the house.
Looking directly east. Yeah.
I
And then
can't
if
see
you,
what you're referring to.
Okay.
it's on our screen.
Yeah. Do you see it, Mark?
No. Maybe it's because I'm sharing.
Yeah, you would have to unshare.
You shouldn't be sharing anymore. I should have stopped it. Can everyone else see my screen? And my
Yes.
cursor? Okay, thanks. So Walt, the one on the left would be to the 6 foot or
Oh,
the
okay.
6 foot setback. The one on the right, you're
Would
saying
be
would
at the required setback.
be at the
Yes.
required setback.
Yeah.
Would that be That's not 30.5 feet though, right?
Well, no, he measured it at 35.5 feet because he's trying to demonstrate where they were going to be standing looking out the window.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as
All
you
right.
can see, the view is over the park to the left of the screen, and there's really not much of a difference there as far as what they're going to be able to see. And that's all I have.
Okay.
Could I reply to that?
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, Mr. Kenninger, I'll give you an opportunity. In fact,
Okay.
just 1 sec. Let me make sure that Ms. Ahouse didn't have anything else she wanted to add.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately Walt's staff report and the addendum he wrote, they're very detailed, they're very comprehensive in our analysis. Ultimately, we determined there's not a special circumstance that exists with this property. What's being requested isn't a substantial property right that currently exists in the vicinity. Particularly because this lot is larger than typical and vacant, so there's a lot of opportunity to design a compliant residence. We do appreciate the interest and investment in infill on this lot and more broadly in the neighborhood. If there's a desire to redevelop this lot and 40 others in the vicinity with taller buildings that are differently sited than permitted under the code, then that may be something that's better facilitated by a zone change. But we are happy to work through a process to get new infill housing permitted in the neighborhood.
Okay. Thanks, Emily. All right, so I'm going to go back to the applicant owner side. You all can now respond to any of the comments you heard from the public or from the zoning department, and then make any closing remarks.
Yeah, I just have 2 comments. Again, one based on setback and one based on the view. It was mentioned a couple of times that that we, and I forget the exact words, but the substantial benefit, that we don't have a substantial benefit or substantially compliant related to other properties. Forget the exact term, but again, if you go back to my original site plan that I was showing before, 1, 2, 3, 4 properties that I showed on that site plan all had 0 setbacks. They're all using and benefiting from 0 setbacks. I know Don Johnson, as one of the part of the development team for the theater, can testify that that has a 0 setback specifically because they wanted the lobby to have a view. The Price building, as they referred to, has a 0 setback, probably because it gave them a better view. Who knows why they did what at that time, but all of those structures have 0 setbacks. And we're asking for a 6-foot setback. So how is that not, how are we not getting something that's substantially compliant on other properties? And again, I'm butchering your terminations you used, but basically they were saying that we're not being denied something that's on other properties. And I disagree with that completely because they are all benefited from that. In regards to the view, you're denying a setback on our property in order to allow the view on the property adjacent to us, the property whose view is blocked by a tree to begin with. And the view is not over the park. I disagree with your photos entirely. The view is of the city. If there's a view, the view is of the city. And the numbers you were referring to, again, as I said, there's nobody standing at 6 feet or 22 feet and standing inside a wall and looking out. It's where your window is. So again, you're doing all this to allow a view from the windows of the property to the rear of us, but you're judging us on a setback line. And that view is 6 or 7 feet away from that wall where your window is. And if you allow us the same critique and the same justification as the building behind us, then there's a very obvious difference. I mean, my photos show it very clearly. At 29.5 feet, we're looking into the side of an old house with no view of the city. At 13 feet, we've got a view of the city. There's no comparison. And as Mr. Knopp very clearly and plainly explained, we're bringing, the idea is bringing the value to this community, and the value is in the view. Surely we could put any kind of structure up there that meets zoning. Only problem is nobody's going to buy it. And if they do, it's going to be at a much reduced price. Now you've just set the precedent for that neighborhood. Mary explained that very well. Kim explained that very well. You know, that is what you're shoehorning us into. So I disagree that we could build an equal structure of equal value and comply with zoning. They will not be equal at all. And I disagree that the rear stair is an option to a stair tower. No comparison. I mean, we've been on fire escapes before. You're comparing an exterior fire escape on the rear of a building to an interior stair that goes up to your roof deck.
Where did, are you saying that Mr. Moeller suggested that in the last hearing?
Well,
Or was that in the staff?
Walter's, and I apologize again, Walter, I'm known for beating up my vocabulary, but Walter suggested a number of times that we could be compliant if we just built a stair on the rear. I was going to show the elevation on the rear elevation of our building. Without decks, that stair would basically be a fire escape.
Okay.
It'd be a stair mounted to the rear of a building. If you've ever gone up a fire escape and stood on a landing of an open stair 20 feet, 30 feet up in the air, you know the uneasy feeling of that. There's no comparison aesthetically, functionally, or practically to a stair mounted on the rear of this building to an interior stair that allows you to walk up to a roof deck. Otherwise, more buildings would have it because it'd be much cheaper for us to build that stair on the rear building. Unfortunately, we know that nobody is going to want to use that stair. It's going to be a negative sales, negative marketing for the house. So it's easy to say that you could build something compliant to zoning here. You can do that anywhere. But again, the problem is nobody's going to want to buy it. And if they do, it's going to be at a significantly reduced price because they won't have the view. The view will not be there. And as Mr. Knopp already said, it's going to be a smaller structure, lower value, and you've basically just lowered the bar for the entire neighborhood. And those are not my words, it's Mary's words. It's Don's word, who's been developing this area for a while. Kim, who's been doing this for longer than I've been around. I mean, sorry, Kim. You know, that's just the fact of the market.
All right. Anything else from Mr. Johnson or Mr. Nobby in closing or otherwise before we adjourn here today?
Yes, I'd like to say something because I was involved in the incline theater, and we purposely moved that over for that lobby to see the view. When you have opportunities for view, it's all about the view. I really don't know why we continue to talk about the adjacent property and their mysterious view they don't have. I actually was on the property with Mark. We measured back, we flew a drone, measured, had the height on the drone, took pictures, and we're out there. And Mr. Walter's pictures, I really question the one on the left because boy, that has a weird angle to it. There is no way that angle is minimum that's portrayed in those pictures. We measured back, we flew drones, we actually had it laid out. We were very precise, and those pictures tell the tale. So this view is a phantom view that rental property has. And I'm kind of wondering why the person who is as concerned to the view has not come to any of these meetings, come to EFIA's meeting, or come to anything. They had a very technical letter that they wrote, which most common people would not have been able to write. But I just don't know why we're still talking about a view that doesn't exist. And I think a lot of maneuvers were made up there to build new structure and make it have the view and take advantage of the view. We've been doing that a lot up there, and that will create the value that we need for the whole area. And a very pivotal point. And so was the theater when we built that, moving that over and getting the view from that lobby.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Johnson. Anything else on the applicant owner side? Okay.
I think we've covered it.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we'll leave it at that then. Want to thank everyone again. This is obviously not one of the easiest decisions that comes in front of me. So I'd like to take a little bit more time to review all the materials, all the photos. I don't always do a site visit, which I probably shouldn't say live on YouTube, just because sometimes it's not as necessary. I can glean a lot from just reviewing the aerials and the GAGES maps, but in this case, I think it would be advantageous and helpful for me to actually get on the ground there and walk around the neighborhood and not just look at Google Maps, which sometimes is a little outdated. And so I know you guys have been waiting for a while on this with the continuance, and so I'll do everything I can to expedite this decision based on just the volume of cases that I have at the moment. I do think that it will take a full 2 weeks, particularly considering I want to go up there and look at it. But I'll do everything I can to get this out as quickly as possible. If you'd like a status update on where I'm at with the decision, feel free to email me directly. If you have any questions for me, you can email me directly. As soon as I finish this decision, I'll put it into a PDF and I'll email it to everyone who was in the hearing today. And so you all will have a copy of it really just moments after it's complete. And yeah, I think that's it. Do you guys have any questions about the process or anything else that happened today?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all again for all of your time here and testimony on this project.
Thank you.
Hope you all have a wonderful